It's my journey, it's your journey. You need my help and I need yours. 'Cause we are.
Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, the young saint who chose heaven over honor. Every generation is blessed with witnesses who illuminate the path to Jesus Christ by the quiet heroism of their daily choices. Among them shines Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, a youth of noble birth who became a radiant example of purity, sacrifice, and devotion. At first glance, Aloysius's story might sound like a fairy tale, set in 16th century Italy among grand palaces and courts. But underneath the surface swirls a drama as gripping as any epic. A battle not for earthly crowns, but for the eternal joy reserved for those who love God with their whole heart. At Journeys of Faith, we believe that the lives of the saints are not distant or irrelevant tales. They are living invitations, bridges between heaven and earth, and powerful reminders that holiness is possible. In every time, for every heart. That's why we invite you to discover the inspiring journey of Saint Aloysius Gonzaga with us. His unwavering choice to put God before worldly honors, his dedication to prayer and the Eucharist, and his compassion for the suffering continue to echo through the centuries, challenging and encouraging us in our own spiritual walk. Come, let us walk in the footsteps of Saint Aloysius, drawing wisdom and grace from his story. May his life awaken within us a thirst for holiness, strengthen our devotion, and inspire us to embrace Christ above all things. Early life of Saint Aloysius Gonzaga. Born into Italian nobility on March 9, 1568, Aloysius Gonzaga was destined for privilege, honor, and high station. But the young Aloysius, whose family castle overlooked the gentle plains of northern Italy, saw his future differently. He was the eldest son of Ferrante Gonzaga, a powerful marquis and a soldier, and Maria Santena, a woman known for her piety. From an early age, Aloysius was surrounded by the trappings of wealth and the sharp expectations of aristocratic life, yet his heart was drawn elsewhere. At just 4 years old, Aloysius was dressed in miniature armor and paraded before dukes and princes, a future warrior in the making. But behind the pageantry, a quiet miracle was at work. Aloysius developed a profound spirit of prayer, spending hours on his knees before Christ in the Blessed Sacrament. He found delight not in festivals or banquets, but in memorizing catechism, reciting psalms, and serving daily Mass. His family hoped he would inherit titles and lands. Instead, Aloysius adopted a life of penitence almost unheard of for a child. He fasted, gave away small fortunes, and served the poor in secret. Though his noble father tried to change him, sending him to the courts of Florence and Spain to experience courtly life, Aloysius was unmoved by privilege and splendor. He remained gracious but unshaken, gently refusing all invitations to vanity, choosing silence and prayer where others sought entertainment. The seeds of sainthood were sown in these quiet moments of resistance. Every act, every prayer, every small renunciation a step nearer to the heart of Christ. Aloysius knew, even as a boy, that real honor was found not in worldly applause, but in the gentle whisper of God's call. Could this be the kind of greatness that lasts forever? For Aloysius, it most certainly was. Discover the power of saintly inspiration with Journeys of Faith. The life of Saint Aloysius Gonzaga challenges us to choose heaven, no matter what the world may offer. If this story touched your heart, why not take the next step and deepen your journey of faith? At Journeys of Faith, we walk alongside you, providing resources to help bring the extraordinary graces of the saints, Our Lady, and the Eucharist into your daily life. Here's how you can grow closer to Christ through the witness of Saint Aloysius Gonzaga and the saints. Explore our library. Dive into inspiring Catholic books and DVDs about Saint Aloysius Gonzaga. Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions, crafted for individuals, families, and parish groups, bring home devotional items. Discover sacramentals and saintly relic prayer cards that keep you spiritually connected wherever you are. Nourish your soul. Use our resources and media to foster meaningful prayer, study, and reflection, becoming anchored to Christ in a world hungry for hope. Join our App and Amp community. Get free access to powerful Catholic content, guides, and a vibrant faith community right on your phone. St. Aloysius Gonzaga collection at our store. Let journeys of faith help you answer God's call, just like St. Aloysius did. Let's walk this path to holiness together. Visit us today and let your journey begin. A noble birth and a higher calling. From the grandeur of Renaissance Italy, Aloysius Gonzaga's story rises like incense, a young nobleman destined for military greatness and worldly honor. Born in 1568 into the illustrious house of Gonzaga in northern Italy, he was heir to titles, wealth, and influence. His childhood was painted with all the colors of courtly life. Pageantry, education among princes, and the constant clang of armor as his father prepared him for the legacy of a warrior. But even amid this opulence, Aloysius's heart beat to a different rhythm. Early on, he was drawn to prayer rather than privilege, to the chapel rather than the battlefield. At just 9 years old, he made a private vow of chastity, a sign that he sought a kingdom not of this world but of the next. And instead of taking pride in his noble lineage, he saw his gifts as opportunities for sacrifice and sanctity, not for self-glorification. The world expected Aloysius to bear the family crest with valor, perhaps to command armies or rule a city. Instead, he shocked his family and the glittering courts of Italy by renouncing his rights and inheritance. Why choose humility over honor, piety over prestige? For Aloysius, the answer was simple yet profound. His calling was to serve the King of Kings. His youthful soul thirsted for the nearness of Christ, and any earthly accolade paled in comparison to the glory of heaven. Steeped in prayer and guided by his love for the Blessed Virgin Mary, Aloysius made his most radical decision, one that would echo for centuries. He entered the Society of Jesus, giving up everything most people could only dream of, because he glimpsed something even greater. In the world's eyes, it may have looked like folly, but to those with eyes of faith, it was the wisdom and courage of a true saint in the making, the spiritual awakening of a young soul. From his earliest days, Saint Aloysius Gonzaga's life echoed with the gentle promptings of grace. Born into the illustrious Gonzaga family, noble by birth, yet mired in the turbulence and intrigues of 16th-century Italy, Aloysius could easily have followed the path mapped out for him, that of honor won on the battlefield, glory for his family name, and carefree privilege. But God had other plans for this youngest scion. Aloysius's heart was mysteriously restless, uncomfortable with the noise and vanity of courtly life. He was just a boy when stories tell us he lingered in prayer, finding more satisfaction in the quiet presence of Jesus than in festivities or feasts. Those around him tried to mold him into a proper young courtier, but Aloysius would slip away, clutching his rosary, whispering prayers rather than plotting power. His awakening to the reality of heaven over honor was no sudden, thunderous revelation. It was a gentle, relentless tide. He was 6 when, while kneeling before a small altar in his father's castle, he consecrated himself to the Blessed Virgin Mary, surrendering his childish ambitions for the pearl of great price. The more he gazed upon the crucifix, the more he understood that true nobility meant imitating Christ, serving, suffering, and loving without counting the cost. While other boys sparred with swords and dreamed of manor houses, Aloysius felt the sting of compassion for the poor and the sick. He went so far as to give away his food, his clothes, even the coins pressed into his palm as a noble's son. His faith became his shield and his courage. The world could not entice him, no matter what pleasures or honors it offered. In silent chapel vigils and whispered rosaries, Aloysius's soul was awakened, set ablaze with the singular desire to dwell in the presence of God. Choosing God over wealth and honor, Aloysius Gonzaga was born into a world of privilege few could imagine. As the eldest son of the powerful Marquis of Castiglione, he was expected to inherit grand estates, command armies, and bask in the admiration of nobility. From infancy, the halls he walked echoed with plans for his future. One filled with honor, status, and wealth. Yet, the gentle voice of God persisted beneath the clamor of courtly ambition. Young Aloysius struggled inwardly as he saw the temptations of courtly life all around him. He came face to face with choices that would test the very core of his soul. Would he pursue a destiny built on earthly glory, or offer his life entirely to God? For Aloysius, there was never really a question. His heart had already been captivated by a love far greater than wealth or titles, by the presence of Christ, discovered in prayer, the sacraments, and service to others. At a young age, Aloysius made a startling decision. He renounced his inheritance and all rights to his family's estate, passing them to his younger brother. To the world, it seemed unfathomable, even foolish. But Aloysius understood that real honor is found in humility, and true riches are measured in faithfulness to God's call. His longing was not for the fleeting applause of men, but for the eternal embrace of heaven. It is in this radical surrender, this courageous yes, amid powerful opposition, that Aloysius shines brightest. His choice speaks across the centuries, challenging us to examine what we esteem most, and inviting us to place God above every passing treasure or title. In a world still dazzled by honor and wealth, the witness of Saint Aloysius Gonzaga echoes as a gentle but persistent invitation. Seek first the kingdom of God, and trust that everything else will fall into place. A son's struggle, family opposition to his vocation. Saint Aloysius Gonzaga's path to holiness was not paved with ease or universal support. Born into the powerful Gonzaga family, Aloysius was heir to wealth, honor, and influence. From his very first steps, his parents envisioned a future adorned with titles and prestige, a life mapped out by family ambition rather than a call from heaven. It was in the quiet sanctuaries of prayer, hidden away from the commotion of courtly life, that young Aloysius first heard the gentle but unmistakable summons of God. Even as a child, he spent long hours kneeling before the altar, seeking Christ above all else. But when Aloysius expressed his longing to enter religious life, his family was stunned. His father, Ferrante Gonzaga, a soldier bred for battle and nobility, could not comprehend how his son would reject privilege for poverty, fame for obscurity, the world's applause for the silence of the cloister. The struggle only grew fiercer with time. Ferrante tried every tactic: anger, persuasion, even threats. He sent Aloysius to courts and royal circles, hoping the lures of luxury and honor would eclipse his son's holy desire. But Aloysius was resolute. In the face of emotional pressure, family expectations, and even the heartbreak of disappointing those he loved most, Aloysius clung to his vocation, willing to trade everything for Jesus Christ. This poignant battle reveals that sanctity often comes at a price. For Aloysius, the call to consecrated life meant surrendering not only his inheritance, but also risking his relationship with his own father. Yet, in his sacrifice, Aloysius witnessed to a truth at the heart of the gospel: to seek first the kingdom, even when the cost is personal. Through his courage, he invites us to examine our own attachments and say with conviction, "Thee will be done." The Jesuit formation of Aloysius Gonzaga, As a young nobleman in Renaissance Italy, Aloysius Gonzaga was no stranger to privilege or prestige, yet, behind the castle walls and velvet tapestries, a flame of yearning for God burned fiercely in his heart. Drawn irresistibly toward holiness, Aloysius shocked his family and society by foregoing the path of military glory and courtly ambition. Instead, he chose a far more radical calling: to become a Jesuit, one of the soldiers of Christ, defending the faith under the banner of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. Entering the novitiate at Rome in 1585, Aloysius left behind not just his title and inheritance, but embraced a life marked by prayer, penance, and the steady discipline of the spiritual exercises. Gone were the feasts and hunting parties of his youth. In their place, he embraced the rigorous daily rhythm of the Society of Jesus. From early morning meditations to classes in philosophy and theology, Aloysius tackled each task with the single-minded zeal of a spiritual athlete. His daily rule was simple but heroic: fasting, silence, service to his brothers, and countless hours at the feet of the Blessed Sacrament. The rote memorization of Latin prayers and the humbling chores of the novitiate, sweeping floors and scrubbing dishes, became for him stepping stones on the ladder to heaven. His superiors quickly noticed something special: a joyful humility that transcended human effort. Aloysius didn't merely follow the letter of the Jesuit discipline. He became its living embodiment. The Society's focus on the Eucharist and filial devotion to Our Lady formed the very core of his spiritual life. With ardent longing, Aloysius united his sufferings and sacrifices to Christ crucified. He willingly set aside every worldly comfort for the greater glory of God in the midst of community life. A crucible of personality clashes and personal trials, he quietly bore misunderstood zeal and physical frailty with an unwavering trust in divine providence. Aloysius's formation as a Jesuit was not just preparation for priestly studies. It was a crucible, a holy forge in which God crafted a soul after his own heart. Through humble obedience, penance, and relentless prayer, Aloysius Gonzaga allowed grace to transform his life and draw those around him closer to the mystery of Christ, a life of purity and discipline. Saint Aloysius Gonzaga's boyhood reads almost like something out of a novel. Palaces instead of playgrounds, noble titles traded for a crown that would never fade. Born into the illustrious Gonzaga family, Aloysius was surrounded by the pomp and power that should have paved his way to worldly renown. Instead, at an age when many are just learning the art of compromise, Aloysius made his declaration. His heart belonged to God. From early childhood, Aloysius fasted, prayed, and mortified himself, choosing silence and stillness over the noise of court life. He was taught the ways of war and leadership, yet each lesson only seemed to deepen his hunger for the humility of Christ. Aloysius's discipline wasn't cold or severe. It radiated with a kind of quiet joy, a love-soaked sacrifice rooted in daily choices to serve, to love, and to surrender. He embraced purity as his shield and sanctity as his mission. The temptations of youth, the fame, the adulation. Aloysius didn't just resist them, he saw them as stumbling blocks on his journey to heaven. Personal comfort meant little to him when souls were at stake, his own above all others. He spent countless hours before the Blessed Sacrament, letting the Lord's presence replenish the strength he poured out for others. In a world obsessed with achievement, Aloysius showed that true greatness comes from giving oneself away. His discipline was not drudgery, but freedom. Freedom from the chains of self and sin, freedom to love with the heart of Christ. Anyone who walks the path of purity and discipline today walks in the footsteps of this young saint, learning, as he did, that holiness is possible for everyone who says yes to God's daily call. Saint Aloysius Gonzaga collection at our store, his deep devotion to the Eucharist. For Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, everything began and ended with Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. Raised in a world of courtly splendor and military honor, the young Aloysius was set apart by his profound, almost single-minded passion for the Eucharist. It was this source and summit, our Lord's real presence, that drew him again and again to prayer, shaping his life more powerfully than any worldly ambition. Aloysius would slip away from the pageantry of his noble home to spend hours in quiet adoration before the tabernacle. He knelt for so long in contemplation that even his own confessor, the great Saint Robert Bellarmine, expressed concern for his health. But Aloysius would simply smile, his face radiant, declaring it was impossible to spend too much time with his hidden God. To him, the Eucharist was not a symbol or a ritual, but Jesus himself, wounded, risen, and waiting for each soul. He received Holy Communion with such reverence that witnesses described an angelic transformation. Nothing distracted him from those precious moments. He prepared his heart with penance, prayer, and careful recollection, knowing he was about to welcome Christ within. Every reception of communion sent him back into the world, more charitable, more courageous in sacrifice, more determined to serve the sick and outcast. The love Aloysius had for the Eucharist fueled his zeal to become a Jesuit and to offer his life in service, even in the filth and danger of a plague-ridden Rome. It was in the light of the host that he discerned his true honor was not in earthly titles, but in the privilege of kneeling before the King of Kings, offering everything, even his life, for the love of Jesus, whom he adored in every lowly tabernacle. For those who draw close to Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, his devotion challenges us. Are we willing to lose ourselves in the same blaze of Eucharistic love? Serving the sick during the plague, amid the cobbled streets and swirling uncertainty of late 16th century Rome, a shadow crept quietly, an epidemic, swift and merciless. This was the world Saint Aloysius Gonzaga stepped into. Not from obligation, but from the profound stirring of charity echoing in his young heart. As the plague swept through the city, doors shuddered, and fear clung to every breath. Yet the Jesuits, entrusted with tending to the stricken, found an eager volunteer in Aloysius, barely a man by worldly standards, but already mature in faith and love. Aloysius's superiors hesitated. His health had always been frail, the fragility of a porcelain vessel, yet he pleaded to serve. He believed, as all true saints do, that Christ himself could be found behind even the most disfigured, feverish face. Day after day, with gentle hands and courageous heart, Aloysius tended to the dying, washed their wounds, fed them, and prayed with them in their last moments. When others recoiled, he saw Christ and knelt. He contracted the plague himself, as many warned he might, but ask anyone who knew him. Aloysius considered this no tragedy. He saw it as a fulfillment of his vocation to lay down his life for others, in imitation of his crucified Lord. His example continues to resonate, reminding us that sanctity is not measured by years or accolades, but by acts of hidden mercy, a willingness to love the suffering Christ in his most distressing disguises.
It's your journey, but we won't make the trip alone, 'cause we know God will lead us home. It's our journey of faith. It's our journey of faith.